I often wonder why it's hard for me to leave the house and why anxiety kind of binds me and the fear binds me. I mean, it could take me like 2, 3 or 4 hours to actually get round to leaving the house. And I guess as part of the kind of whole process of kind of analysing it and trying to get over the fact that I find it so hard to leave, I just started thinking about what are the things that I'm afraid of. I mean, I'm not afraid of big bad monsters or, kind of anything weird coming out at me in the street. I'm not afraid of being knocked down by cars or anything like that. I mean, getting back to that whole thing of depression being, of the effects of depression kind of being, the scarring on your brain is kind of long term. So even though you might be over the depression, the effects of it are still there. Um, I think the fears abound to things that happened to me in the past. Like, for example, I'm afraid of meeting people. Now, when I was a kid, when I was younger, I was not that much younger in fairness, but I was very quite self-conscious and shy. I I find it an awful lot easier to get on with people now, but it's more down to the fact that when you have a pain in your ass and it lasts a long time, you just kind of go. Pfft. So now it's kind of like, you know, um, I can't say that my self confidence is any better, but I'm just past caring about how hard it is. But so I find it an awful lot easier to go out now, but still there's that fear of meeting people. When I actually meet people, that's at 99% of the people that I meet, I enjoy talking to. So that fear is irrational. It totally is. But it doesn't prevent me from kind of being afraid of meeting people and kind of referencing back to those times of when my lack of self confidence really, really kind of got to me. It's other little things like I'm afraid of getting work. I'm afraid of meeting somebody and saying, "Oh, Pat, I got a bit of work for you." Now, work is even now remains very. It's particularly hard now. I think over the last year or two, any work that I do, I find particularly hard. But it's all linking back again to one thing that people say about depression. Oh, you work your way through it, and you know, um, you plow through, and I plowed through. I think maybe my first major depression where work really affected me was kind of back into my early 20s when I was working as a steel salesman. Yeah, go figure. And yeah, I worked through it. And of course, there's an awful lot of mental scarring from that as well, because it's not particularly good to work through a problem. I mean, when you've got a broken leg, you don't work through it, you rest your leg, but in the same way, depression is kind of viewed differently, and you kind of, you work through it. And that has had its legacy, I mean, of effect to me. I mean, even after my breakdown, the next day I was working on a show, and the day after I operated the dress rehearsal. I mean, I was practically incoherent. I couldn't even talk, but I still operated the show. So even though I find working hard now, I mean, it's not as bad as it was, and I don't have depression to work through. Again, I think it's just the scarring, the legacy of what happened in the past. That I'll go out the door and somebody's going to ask me to do some work, and it's like, oh my god. So there's kind of that fear as well. There's another strange one. It's like getting out the door is hard, but getting back home again is just as hard. When you get out, the fact you're going back home and you're on your own, and one of the things that you do when you're here is you kind of beat yourself over the fact that you've got all these little projects you want to do and you don't do them, and you're beating yourself up over that. And at least when you're out, you're away from that. So actually, as hard as it is to leave home, it's harder to get back, and that kind of feeds into the fear of kind of leaving as well. And it's all irrational. At the end of the day, I kind of think, the last 2.5 years have been good for me, and I've been depression free, and I've gone out and I've done an awful lot more, and I've been out an awful lot more, and it's been hard and whatever. But it's certainly a lot easier than it was when I was like, really bad with depression. So yeah, it's the legacy, it's the scarring, and I guess with time that will improve, and some stage I'll better just be able to walk out the door. And one of the great things about having a bike and living on the top of a hill is that sometimes I just sit on the bike and I'm halfway down the hill before I even realise that that I'm actually gone. So that makes things an awful lot easier. But I think one of the main things that is kind of holding me back today in particular is that well, I still don't have any clothes on, so